I've just spent the last few hours hands-on with every new iPhone. So that's the way better than expected iPhone 17, this shockingly thin new iPhone Air, and then the big boys, the 17 Pro and Pro Max. I'm not gonna lie to you, after the very slow event last year, this one is a complete reshuffle. Like, this one changes how I see the entire iPhone lineup. Because it starts with the basic iPhone 17, which, you know, when you first look at it, it's almost identical to the iPhone 16 last year. The same camera layout, the same buttons, super familiar design. But then you turn it on and you realize this is not a basic iPhone anymore. In fact, this is a full-on Pro iPhone now. Like the display, it's got the same size body, but it's now a 6.3-inch screen compared to 6.1, which also means the bezels are now the thinnest ever on an iPhone. And yes, sometimes these bezel improvements need a microscope for you to be able to tell. Not this one. It is pretty immediately obvious when you look at this compared to the previous phone. It's got a tougher ceramic shield 2 coating on it. They say it's 3 times more resistant to scratches, but to be fair, I'm pretty sure the random particles in my pocket will still find a way. But also, this is like the easiest to read that an iPhone display has ever been. Even in this super bright room where you can kind of tell that my older 16 is struggling. And that's partly the fact that the 17 now has the Pro's 3000 nits of brightness, but it also has an anti-reflective coating, which we've never had on an iPhone. So have a look here. You know where the light is hitting the screens? Can you see how there is a little bit less of a visual interruption from it now? And it's all topped off with ProMotion, meaning that this is now a 120Hz display that can also go all the way down to 1Hz for the always-on mode. And I mean, on one hand, they had to do this eventually. You know, we've given the iPhone like a once-a-year annual roasting session every time Apple has announced a new phone that still happens to have a 60Hz display. But then on the other hand, it's just so un-Apple to actually release a Pro-branded feature on the base iPhone. Some part of me still thought that this phone would forever be doomed because the kinds of people buying it just wouldn't care about 120Hz. I've never been more glad to be wrong. The cameras are better too. The ultra-wide has gone from 12 megapixel to 48, which is in line with the Pros, and that will also improve your close-up macro photography because it uses the same camera, with also this ability to record from both the front camera and your rear cameras at the same time. I don't really know what this is for. Like, I can't imagine this becoming the next TikTok meta, but the implementation is slick. I do like how you can drag the bubble to decide where you want your face cam to be, and then how that reflects in the final footage. But the really interesting thing that no one saw coming is what is happening with the front camera. So they upgraded the camera from being able to take 12 megapixel photos to now taking 18 megapixel ones, but this is now a square camera sensor, which means you can take vertical selfies and you can take horizontal selfies no matter which way you're holding the phone up. This is so cool. The shots are wider than before, they're more detailed than before, and it also has center stage, which means the camera can automatically go out wider and follow you around when you're on a FaceTime call. It really does feel like, after years of purposefully nerfing the base iPhones to keep the Pros as attractive as possible, Apple's just decided that this year is the year that they rip the band-aid off entirely. Like, apart from the missing telephoto camera, there is such little missing here that I think this is by far the best value phone in the lineup. Because the iPhone 17 now also charges faster than last generation 16. It has an extra 8 hours of battery life if you're watching videos, at least according to Apple. It's got the new A19 chip, which doesn't feel like a mind-blowing upgrade, but still, you know, that's an extra 20% performance. And then, in like the most un-Apple-like move ever, they upgraded the storage to 256 gigs from 128. And the moment they said that, I was so sure, like I'd already started writing that they were going to bump the price up to $899, but they didn't. This is the same $799 starting price as last year. Honestly, if I'd bought an iPhone 16 at full price, I'd be crying right now. But then we've got the completely new $999 iPhone Air. And this is where things get very interesting. So this is Apple's latest attempt at filling that awkward middle child slot in their lineup. In 2020, they made the iPhone mini, but then realized that no one wanted mini phones. Then in 2022, they changed that for the Plus, which failed too because it just didn't do enough differently. So instead of shrinking or stretching, Apple's decided that now it's time to try flattening. And like, I'm going to be honest with you, this phone absolutely creates an impression. Like, the first time I picked the thing up, my mouth involuntarily formed a silent O as I truly came to terms with how, at 5.6 millimeters, this is thinner than any previous iPhone. This is thinner than Samsung's ultra-slim Galaxy S25 Edge. The thing's thinner than a pencil. But the other thing is, it also feels a lot more luxury than I was expecting it to. When I watched the thing get announced, I thought, oh, it looks kind of flimsy and so light that it's a bit cheap. But it really doesn't feel it, especially with this glossy titanium rail going all the way around the sides and the ceramic shield that you've now got on the back. I think the 17 Air is made for the kind of person who cares enough about their phone to not just take the base 17, but also someone who isn't so into the specs that they'll worry about what they're missing compared to the Pros. And I think if you are that kind of person, you will look at this Air, you will compare it to all past experiences you've had with iPhones, and you will think, this is a miracle. But I see this product kind of like the really hot girl that you probably shouldn't try to date. You know it's bad news. You know it's not going to last. But let's be honest, you're probably going to try your luck anyway. But the truth is, you're making two pretty fundamental compromises for this thinness. The battery, which Apple helpfully tells us is still an all-day battery, but whose day? So this is a smaller battery than you get on every other iPhone released this year. And it doesn't exactly reassure me that Apple has specifically made a MagSafe power bank designed to slip onto the Air, and that when they quoted the battery life of the Air, they quoted the figure that assumed you had this battery pack attached. But then, according to Apple, because of all the efficiency improvements of their new A19 chips and this new N1 chip that handles Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and AirDrop, that this tiny sliver of a phone has the same battery life as the 16 Pro. I mean, if that's true, that is absolutely bonkers. I will start prepping the battery test immediately. But sadly, it's not just battery. You're also getting slower charging. You're only getting one speaker, which is really poor in 2025. And then the other big one is you're also losing the ultra-wide camera that you would have had on the normal iPhone 17. And yeah, the one camera you do get is a decent 48 megapixel sensor, basically the same as the one on the 17. But this does mean this is a single rear camera on a $1,000 phone in almost 2026, which, tell me that's not form over function. I mean, to be fair, it might work for Apple. It's exactly what they did with the MacBook Air, and that's now their best-selling laptop by a mile. But my take is that the weight and the thickness of a normal phone is not enough of a problem to need this drastic of a solution. It's a very alluring phone, and you can so see how they're going to market it to the average consumer as a way to get Pro performance, since it does come with the new more powerful A19 Pro chip. But I actually think there'll be a very large difference in how that chip performs in this compared to in the actual Pro phones. So let's talk about those pros. I think the fact that the base iPhone 17 now has all the previously Pro features, and that the Air has become the pretty phone, the phone for people who just want their device to look sexy, means that this year it really feels like Apple has been freed up to just prioritize function over form on these models. These are the most clearly actually made for pros Pro iPhones I have ever seen, which is probably why they now feel comfortable charging the new higher prices of $1,099 for the Pro, which is pretty much the highest amount anyone is charging for a non-XL size device, and then $1,199 for the Pro Max. So there's a few ways you can see this function-first approach in action. Like the first is, these are thicker. Both the 17 Pro and the 17 Pro Max, they're almost 8% thicker than their previous counterparts, which is by its nature less stylish, but you know what makes a phone truly beautiful? It is just having a big, fat battery on the inside. And that these do. Apple's saying you'll get up to 33 hours of battery on the 17 Pro, which is a very healthy jump from the 27 on the 16 Pro, and then 39 on the Pro Max this time. All while having the side effect that I'm absolutely sure Apple has thought through of making the Air look even thinner when you hold them side by side. But there's more. You'll also notice these Pros look very different to last year's. Again, there is functional reason. You might know that for a long time now, pretty much every smartphone has had metal all around the sides and then a glass sheet across the back, because you can still wirelessly charge your phone through glass. But there's a problem. Glass is absolutely terrible at dissipating heat. So this time, the iPhone 17 Pros are metal everywhere, except the specific zone where they have to be glass, or I guess ceramic shield this time around. This kind of window from here to here. So they've sacrificed on the minimalism of the design, but this metal should be, like, no exaggeration, 200 times better at getting heat from inside the phone to outside the phone, which is also paired with a vapor chamber for the first time ever on an iPhone, and a swap from titanium as the metal of choice to aluminium. Which, look, the choice to go with aluminium is fine. It's a very standard material that's still used in many flagship phones, and it might be an improvement. It's lighter than titanium, it's over 10 times more conductive, it's easier to color, which is the only reason how they've been able to make the first actually interesting Pro iPhone color in far too long. This bronzy orange, which is definitely the one that I'm going to try and get. My issue with this situation is that Apple just switched to titanium 2 years ago. And when they did that, they made a massive deal about it. It was the headline feature of the iPhone 15 Pros. And they didn't stop talking about how much more beautiful the phones were because of this titanium. So it just feels a little bit cheeky to now quietly be like, it's aluminium, like every other phone, and then proudly talk about all the reasons why the new phones are better that are just because it is aluminium. But anyway, put all these things together and the iPhone 17 Pros should run a lot cooler, which is not the most exciting thing in the world, but it is needed. It'll make the phones perform a lot better, especially with the new A19 Pro chip. I tried some gaming on this and I'm not normally too taken aback by mobile gaming demos, but this actually was the most graphically impressive, smooth gaming experience I have ever had on a smartphone. They should charge faster, because charging is also programmed to slow down when things get hot. Honestly, I'll be happy if this just means my phone won't dim its screen to 0 brightness the minute the weather forecast changes to predict sun. But the thing that I'm most curious about is what's happening with the cameras. So the Pros get the same square front camera sensor that can do both orientations. And the other big change is the telephoto camera is going from 5x optical zoom with a 12 megapixel resolution to 4x optical zoom, but with a 48 megapixel resolution, which should actually be a double-sided upgrade, because it means that when you're zooming in, you don't have to wait all the way till 5x before your telephoto camera kicks in. So the quality in the early part of your zoom is better, but also because you have 4x the number of pixels, even though the optical zoom number is slightly lower, it should mean your photos look better, even when you go really far in. And that's the iPhone 17s. Very impressed with the base phone, interested by the Air, and then I feel like the Pros could have done a little bit more, but they're solid. Shockingly little mention of Apple Intelligence this time around, but I kind of prefer that because it means we get a bit more on the hardware end compared to the iPhone 16 generation. But now there's no titanium, it's like all the more reason to just get a Torras case. Their Q3 Air has literal airbags inside of it. So cushioned, it doesn't matter how many times you drop the thing. But also, it's the only phone case that actually makes your life easier. I use the magnet on the back all the time to quickly snap it onto things to take videos. I use this stand every day so I can call someone while I'm eating or hook it around something so I can watch a show while showering. And I've seen so many companies trying to copy this design, but this is the real deal. Strongest magnets, sturdiest hinge, grippiest sides. Plus, their FlexLine charger is a lifesaver when I'm traveling, because this one brick replaces 2 high-speed chargers, but also with a baked-in retractable USB-C cable. Link below to have a look yourself.